Okay, we're going to start out in Modeler and we're going to animate an object in a different way than the morphs. We're going to use bones and weights. So I'm going to create a simple like robotic arm, but you can get really creative. I hope you get really creative with this and do whatever you want. So I'm just going to start with a box as sort of a base for my robot arm. Give it a little bit of dimension. And this is just going to be the platform it's sitting on. And I want it to be in the center because that's going to help me set everything up. So on the PC, you can just press F3, or on the Mac, you have to press FN, then F3 to get this. So just make sure it's centered on all the axes, press OK, and that should center it for you. Now that's going to be the only thing that is not animated or moving in my object, so that's going to be on its own layer. Then I'm going to make a new layer where everything will be animated on. So I'm up here on the top and I'm clicking this new layer, and I can click the bottom to see the old one, and I'm going to make sort of a disc that's going to turn on top. So I'm creating this disc shape. I'm getting it right in the center because that's going to help me out getting everything even. And again, you're going to make yours however you want. And for this, you might press N and make sure that for this one, it's the X and the Z that are the same. So I just might make this 1.3 to match the Z. And get it a perfect circle. And you can add more sides, 90 is a good amount of sides to make it look really smooth. Okay, I'm gonna press the space bar and I'm in polygon selection. I'm gonna select a polygon, go to the right bracket and go to Q, and I'm gonna name it disc base, and we can make it any color you want. Press OK, always check smoothing and press OK. And I was in a different, I didn't see my color change because I need to be in texture. What I want you to do before we go any further is name your layers. This is really important for this one, and it will help you later on. So it's also a good thing to get in the habit of. So just on the left here, and it doesn't matter what tab you're in, you can always access this. You can see the top one stay the same. So come to layers, and I haven't named my project yet, so it's still unnamed. You just click on this to get the drop down. And on the left column, it's checked on the one that's active that we're looking at. So you just double click where it says unnamed, and I'm going to call this robot arm because that's where we're going to build our robot arm. And then the one that's on top, the second column here is the one that like we can see the outline of, but that's not active. I'm going to name that, double click on it, and just name it base. So when you're setting up yours, just make sure you set it up and name the layers because you'll be much happier later, I promise. So I'm going to click so that's active and click that. And then I'm just going to do a save with just Command or Control S. P6 demo model. Okay, so just make sure you have it saved in a folder and you can see that changed right away. So we can close out of this. We have our layers named. We're good. So I'm still in this robot arm layer, and I'm gonna make an axle that this big robot arm is gonna swing around. So I'm gonna make the two like holders for the axle, and we're gonna come to create box. Once you see me do it, you'll get a better idea. You can always zoom in a lot with this magnifying glass and then move it around with these arrow tools. So create a box. I'm going to make a long, and I'm going to set it up on the center on the x-axis. And then I'm going to spacebar. I'm going to polygon select, right bracket, press Q, and I'm going to call it, there's a name for it, but I don't know what it is right now. So I'm just going to call it that, give it a color, press OK, and then I'm just going to make another one by doing multiply mirror X, and that should show up there. So now I'm going to make a disc that goes in between the two, and this is what our arm's going to rotate on. So create disc, and I'm going to start it over here in the right window, and then I'm going to pull out the length of it. And you can make yours go through this base, or you can make it come right up next to it. That's totally up to you. And I'm going to make it a little smaller. And the one thing we do want with this is to give it enough space. You'll see as we build the arm, we want enough space for the arm to rotate so that it's not hitting the disc on the bottom as it's moving. So just make sure to give it a little bit of space. You can press N to get to the numeric, and on this one the Y and the Z should be the same, so it's circular, and also, you know, give it some more sides. I'd say at least 90 to make it look really smooth and round. And then I'm going to hit spacebar. I'm going to press question mark to deselect. I'm going to select some of the polygons on this axle, right bracket, Q. I'm going to call it axle, and you're just naming and giving colors to everything. I'm going to press question mark to deselect. Looks pretty good. Okay, now we're going to draw the big robot arm. So the main big arm for this. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to come into my box primitive, and I'm going to draw it out. And this is what's going to rotate on that axle that we just created. So you want to center it, because that is going to help everything be easier. And I can zoom in here and kind of just make sure it's going through the axle. Okay, and I'm going to press spacebar, then I'm going to polygon select, right bracket, press Q, call it make it a color. Okay, so now I just want to test the range of motion to make sure it's not hitting the bottom of the base here. And it's not going to be perfect right now. This isn't exactly how it's going to animate, but I just want to test it before I go any further. So let's just modify rotate. We've used this a lot. And I'm going to come into the right window here and just make sure I can move it around and it's not hitting the bottom, which it is not, so that's good. I'm just gonna Command or Control Z to get it back. Okay, so now we're gonna make a small arm on top of the big arm, and it's gonna be connected to the big arm with a disc. So I'm gonna create a box. I'm gonna come up here, and we're doing everything on the center Y line just to keep it all nice and centered and even. It'll make it easy for us when we create our bones to have them all in the right place. So that looks pretty good. Make it a little bigger maybe. All right, so again, important thing is that it's centered here on the X and Y axis. And that looks pretty good. I'm gonna spacebar. I'm gonna polygons. Oh, first I have to question mark to deselect. Polygon select, right bracket, Q, small arm. Let's make it maybe a little bit of a lighter color. That's okay. And now I'm going to make a little disc that will connect them. Obviously, this isn't like mechanically correct, but we're just going to make it look as good as we can. So I'm going to start the disc up here on the top. I'm going to get it in the center, and I'm going to drag it up. And I'm going to zoom in so I can really get this in the right place. So zooming in helps with a lot of things, and especially for accuracy. So, especially when this is going to be pretty small, I'm It doesn't need to be this long. And so this smaller arm is just going to kind of rotate on the top arm, just like kind of twist on it. And then you can press N, and for this one it would be the X, and the Z should be the same size so that it's circular. So I'm going to press spacebar when I get it the way I want. I'm going to press question mark to deselect. I'm going to select some of those polygons on the little axle that I made and hit right bracket Q, and I'm going to make it small arm axle, and I'll make it that gray color too. Press OK. And then I can press question mark to deselect. All right, next thing I'm going to do is make some like finger pinchers on the top of the small arm, just to give it a little bit of extra flair or interest. And with yours, you can get super creative with this. So I'm just in the box primitive. This is sort of similar to the axle holders that we made. So just make one. And then I'm going to spacebar, polygon select, right bracket, Q, pincher. I'll make it an even lighter blue. And then I'm going to multiply and mirror X. So now that we have, I'm going to press A so we can see the whole thing. Now that we have our robot arm completely worked out, and it looks good, and it's all lined up here on the y-axis, we're going to add a skeletal structure. So they're called skelegons, and the skelegons are going to act like bones, and then we're going to make weight maps that act like muscles. So we're in the Setup tab here, and you're just going to click on skelegons. Nothing's going to happen until you click into your model. So I'm going to click on skelegons, and we're going to make 3 bones. So the first one is going to go from the bottom of this base just to the axle. The second one's going to go from there to sort of the center of the smaller axle, and then the third one's going to go to the top of this arm. So anytime you click after you press skelegon, it's going to make a bone. And that can mess you up later on if you're just clicking all over the place. So you want to click and drag. Look, it's even telling you on the bottom here. It's saying click and drag out skelegon chain. So we're going to make a chain of bones. So I'm clicking at the bottom here, holding my mouse and dragging to the center of this axle. It does not have to be exact. And that's bone 1. And then after you click and drag the first one, you can just click to get the second one. So then I'm just clicking and it automatically makes the second one, and then I'm just clicking up here to make the third one. So the important thing to remember is that you click and drag first, and then you can just click for the second 2. So you should have 3 bones at least, and then after you make it, you can come in and adjust these circles. But we want them just on the y-axis, because that's how we have everything lined up, and that is why we have everything lined up on the y-axis. So you can kind of check that it's all lined up there. Mine is looking good. You can zoom in. And now we're going to create the weight map, which is the muscles. So this one we have to select parts of our model and assign them to specific weight maps. First we're going to select the base and the 2 axle holders. So I'm going to press the space bar to get out of the skelegon tool. So I'm not in the skelegon tool. So you do that by either pressing space bar or clicking on the tool again so that it's not active. I'm in the polygon selection, and I'm going to click on some of the polygons on the disk. I'm going to hit the right bracket key to select that whole thing. Then I'm holding shift. So I'm just holding the shift key to add to the selection, and I'm selecting some of this that's holding the axle. I'm hitting the right bracket key. Then I'm pressing shift again, selecting this one, and right bracket key. So if I come in here, you can see what's selected. That's what's selected. and then we're going to go to map on the top. So map is up here on the top, and we're going to go to new weight map. So first you click map, and then you come where it says weight, and you do new weight map, and you get a pop-up here. We're going to leave this pop-up up while we're creating all our weight maps. So the first one, we're going to name it base axle holders. And depending on what yours is, just be really specific because you're going to need to assign the bones to the maps later on, and the more specific you are, the easier that will be. And then you just press create, and you can see this yellow bar is telling us that that new map is created. So now we're going to deselect with the question mark key, and you're leaving this open. Don't shut that off. And now I'm going to select the axle, so I'm just clicking on it, right bracket, and then I'm clicking on the arm, holding shift. I'm holding down shift and clicking on the arm and right bracket. So the axle and the entire arm are selected. And then I'm making a new name so that it will make a new map, and I'm going to call it big arm. And then I'm going to just press create, and you can see axle, big arm. I think I'm spelling axle different every time, so just ignore that. It doesn't really matter as long as you name it something that you know what it is. Now, if you're selecting and you accidentally select the bones, that's okay. You don't have to select them, but it is okay if you do select them. So then I'm pressing question mark to deselect. I'm clicking on this tiny axle here, and I'm hitting the right bracket, and then I'm pressing shift. See, my bones are selected, it's going to be okay. And I'm selecting the little arm, right bracket, and then I'm holding shift and selecting a pincher, right bracket, holding shift and selecting a pincher and right bracket. And then this is going to be named little arm, and create. So now we've created 3 weight maps that are going to be assigned to those 3 bones. So we're going to set that up right now. We're going to assign them. The important thing is that every part of the model needs a weight map, so it'll work. It won't work if every part of the model doesn't have a weight map assigned to it. So this is why we put everything that's going to move on its own layer so that you remember to select everything, assign it a weight map. So now we can close out of this because we've done everything. And we're going to come to, we're back in setup, and we're going to come to skeleton tree. So we're in setup on the top and skeleton tree over here on the left. And this is a pop-up. Now, if yours is going to be really complicated, you can double click and name your bones. For now, we only have 3 bones. We can remember the first one we drew was on the bottom, and then the second one was in the middle, and the third one's on the top. So to assign the weight map to the specific bone, we just come see where it says weight map in this column here, and it's blank. So I'm just double clicking there. And then we're picking from the drop down. So this is why you wanted to name everything very specifically. So the first one we drew was on the base, right? So it's the base and the axle holders. Press OK. Double click on the second one. The second one we did was the big arm, right? Axle and the big arm. And then the third one we did was the little arm. So you're just making sure the bone is attached, assigned to the right weight map, and press close. And now that that's all set up, we're going to send it to layout. So the first thing you want to do is make sure you're working on the right layer. So you want to see this like yellow dotted bounding box around it. So if you're not on that layer, if like the base is selected or if you have other layers, just make sure where it says current item, you're selected on the right thing. Because see, now it's the base, which we don't want. We want it on the model robot arm. And this is why we named our layers, because if you had a lot of layers, you could just easily select from this list and get to the right one. Okay, so now we're going to convert the skelegons to bones so that they can be animated. So how we do that, we're on the correct layer. Make sure you see this yellow dotted lines around it. So we're going to go to Setup and the CVT skelegons. So Setup, CVT skelegons, you should see the bones in there. If you don't, there's this little arrow next to where it says like textured shaded solid. Just make sure bone X-ray is checked. See how bone X-ray is checked? And that's how you'll be able to see them. So let me move this light out of the way because it's kind of distracting. Okay, now we're going to move and rotate the bones. So on the bottom here, you come to bones and you can see where it says current item, it has our list of bones. So if you name them, it would be the name. And when I click on one, it highlights the one I'm on. You can also use the arrow keys to move through them. So let's start with the bottom. And all you do is modify, rotate, and move the way we've been doing with everything else. So rotate is really what you're going to be spending a lot of time on. So let's see. So I'm in rotate. Oops. For this one, I'll probably just have it rotate like this so that the disc kind of moves around. And then I'm going to press my up arrow key. It's not liking getting to bone 2. So I'm going to go to bone 2 and I'm in my rotate and I'm taking this green bar and now this is where it's really going to start to move. And this is why we set it up so it looks good and it's not hitting anything in Modeler. And then you can come to your third bone, and that one I was thinking it would like twist around like that. So you can play around with that, get comfortable with it, and to animate, you're going to, let's get this back up, zoom out a little bit. So to animate, you're just going to move the timeline marker and rotate and move those bones. So I get it set up where you want it to start, then maybe come to 10, and I'm going to have this twist, and then I'll have bone 2 rotate, no, not that way. Rotate, and then maybe I'll have the first one rotate like that. And then we can see it moving. And then you can move the timeline indicator, this gray thing down. And I have auto key set. So every time we make a movement, it's going to automatically make a keyframe. So I can rotate this a little more. I can rotate this down. And oops, get to bone 3 and which one? It's this blue one, I think. And I can move that around. So you can move your time indicator here and just see what's happening. And you can really spend a lot of time testing this. So you're going to make yours really exciting and interesting. You're going to have at least 3 pieces, at least 3 bones moving, but you can make as many as you want. You don't have to make a robot arm. The things that are important are to make sure it's moving in a believable way, so nothing's like smashing against anything else. And you're also going to place it in a room or sky dome. You're going to add some interesting lighting to make it dramatic and really pay attention to the composition and your camera angles. You can animate the camera too to add more interest. And you're going to make it 7 seconds, so that's 210. So make it super interesting, and then you're just going to render the scene as a PNG ping sequence, same as the last projects we've been doing, and bring it into Premiere and add some music and it will look awesome. All right, have fun.